This presentation is about the life and accomplishments of Dr. William Oliver Baker. Dr. Baker was mostly known as Vice President of the Research Division at Bell Labs from 1955 to 1973, what many consider the golden years of Bell Labs because of all the inventions and innovations that were discovered during those years. Baker was himself a significant chemist during his early years at Bell Labs. But Baker had strong influence outside Bell Labs, in Washington, and on many boards. His advice to presidents and in affairs of national security justify his characterization as a diplomat of science and as a science patriot. Yet, Dr. Baker was relatively unknown. He operated behind the scenes, shunning personal publicity. He placed country before self and was unique in his ability to see the big picture in applying science and technology to practical uses and to national security. This presentation will review his life, summarizing his significant accomplishments and the overall impact of his career. Some of his writings and philosophies will also be explored. William Oliver Baker was born on July 15, 1915, on a farm in Quaker's Neck, on the eastern shore of the Chesapeake Bay in Maryland. He attended a one-room schoolhouse there and enjoyed boating and his pets. He assisted his mother in raising turkeys and in other farm chores. Bill's parents were from Brooklyn, and in 1913 they purchased the farm in Quaker's Neck and moved there. Bill's mother, Helen, achieved great success in solving the challenges of raising a large flock of turkeys, and was famous as the Turkey Lady. She even wrote a book about breeding turkeys and invented her own brand name for her breeder birds, Baker's Bronze Beauties. Bill Baker graduated from high school at age 15 and then attended Washington College in Chesterton, a few miles from the farm. He graduated from there in 1935 with the singular honor Maxima Cum Laude with a B.S. in physical chemistry. He then went to Princeton University, where he received his Ph.D. in 1939. His parents sold the farm in 1937 and moved to New Jersey to be closer to their son. Immediately after graduation from Princeton University, Dr. Baker went to Bell Telephone Laboratories as a research chemist. There, he perfected the manufacture of synthetic rubber, a strategic element in World War II. He also invented polymer carbon composites. His accomplishments and abilities were recognized by Dr. Ralph Bound, then research vice president at Bell Labs, and Baker rose through positions of management. 8 years after starting at Bell Labs, Baker became head of the Polymer Research Department in 1948. A few years later, in 1951, he was promoted to Director of Chemical and Metallurgical Research. In 1955, he was promoted again, this time to Vice President of the entire research organization at Bell Labs. He remained in this position until 1973, when he became President. In 1979, he was elected to Chairman of the Board of Bell Labs, and retired a year later in 1980. Baker was very proud that during his tenure, 11 Nobel Prizes were awarded to Bell scientists. But it was far beyond Bell Labs, in Washington, D.C., in matters of national security, where Baker also had substantial impact. The famed Baker Report of 1958 was so secret that even today, many portions are still blanked out. This report strengthened the role of the National Security Agency and increased its use of digital computers. The report resulted also in the creation of the Institute for Defense Analysis Research Facility at Princeton. In 1959, President Eisenhower tasked Baker with reorganizing defense communications, which resulted in 1961 with the creation of the Defense Communications Agency. In 1961, Baker and Edwin Land recommended the creation of the National Reconnaissance Office. Dr. Baker was a personal advisor to many presidents of the United States, in particular Presidents Eisenhower, Kennedy, Johnson, Nixon, and Ford. Baker was the longest-serving member of the President's Foreign Intelligence Advisory Board. Baker was there in Washington at dramatic events. In 1962, it was Baker who told President Kennedy that the Russian ships had turned during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Baker and Clark Clifford were lunching together at the White House when they were told that President Kennedy had been shot. The following audio selections are short comments by Dr. Baker about some of the presidents he served. Eisenhower.
In terms of really fundamental understanding of what we had to do and how the system was working, I'd say Eisenhower was the leader, and Eisenhower, of course, knew so well the machinery and what you had to do in the other branches of the government to get things done, that he was uniquely qualified to do that. So he was very close.
Kennedy.
Land and I were his special missionaries, and every time there'd be a chief head of state, he insisted that Land and I go with him onto the third floor living quarters of the White House. So he would receive these visitors there and then proceed to tell them about us, you see, and want us to talk to them.
Johnson.
I remember so well, we were telling him how trying to get the national security stuff straightened out, and he interrupted. He said, "Now let me tell you about my problems." And he went into this lack of fluidity or what was really, from his point of view, I think, rationale about the government broadly.
Nixon.
How did they get into this terrible tangle? That, I think, remains as one of the real challenges of the period. I don't think anybody understands how in the dickens anybody that had Nixon's innate intelligence and general poise and patriotism and the sense of being a president got into the situation. Nobody, it's a very, very puzzling deal.
But not Carter.
Carter thought we were general flubs.
The intelligence community reveres Baker. In many ways, he was the ideal intelligence officer, operating behind the scenes with his tremendous memory, gathering information, and keeping all secret. In Baker's honor, the Intelligence and National Security Alliance has been awarding the William Oliver Baker Award yearly since 1985 to honor individuals who have contributed significantly to national security. Baker had a deep commitment to improving literacy in the United States, particularly literacy in mathematics and science. He was the co-author of the 1983 report entitled A Nation at Risk. In his writings, Dr. Baker blamed society at large for the deficiencies in literacy. He also had strong beliefs that individual education and genius were the base for human progress. In summary, Dr. Baker's areas of influence were in education, math and science literacy, research and its management, national security and intelligence, science policy and diplomacy, the information age, and materials research. Baker's writings give a glimpse of his philosophies and priorities. First, research and management. You ask the right questions to stimulate the creative ego, and then bend over backwards not to claim credit. This takes a great deal of skill, but it can be done if a culture has been created within the organization that encourages it. A characteristic failing of modern R&D is overcompression of the span between discovery and use, so that basic scientists are expected to become design engineers, and then the whole system crumbles from internal pressures and implosions. The ideas of scientific discovery come one at a time from one person and one mind at a time. Sometimes two or three can aid each other, but scientific discovery cannot be collectivized, and it does not flourish in collectivized structures. Next, national security and intelligence. We must learn to discount the sheer weight of knowledge of technical detail and of operational elaboration that a large and busy intelligence bureaucracy naturally feels called upon to deliver to somebody. The maintenance of an uneasy peace depends more fully on intelligence skills and especially verity than ever before. While nothing yet replaces human intuition, it is dramatically displaced by the world's electronic sensors, ranging from outer space to underseas, including Earth seismic waves from nuclear tests and rocket launchings. And finally, science policy. The traditional concept is that to get anything to work requires a task force. The phenomenon was fortunately unknown to Galileo, Newton, or Einstein, or other masters of classical and quantum mechanics, but it has become a socio-physical requirement of recent years. A White House science office should not be expected to be a central form of either involving the president systematically in science policy and operations, or as a sounding board for the concerns or proposals of the national community. To assure appropriate detachment of policy from practice in science and engineering requires the genius of making things work in practice so well that nobody will much notice that none of them is even supposed to have a policy associated with it. If we believe in the kind of freedoms and ideals that this country was founded on, we've got to find our friends and work with them. And science and technology are very much a part of that strategy. Baker was quite active as a trustee and board member for many organizations and institutions. Some were Rockefeller University, Carnegie Mellon University, Princeton University, the Mellon Foundation, which he was also instrumental in its creation, the Aerospace Corporation, the Summit and Elizabeth Trust Company in New Jersey, and the Fund for New Jersey. He was a member of many professional and honorary organizations. A few include the National Academy of Science and the National Academy of Engineering, the American Philosophical Society, the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, and the American Institute of Chemists. Dr. Baker was honored with many awards. A few include the Presidential National Security Award, the National Medal of Science, the Priestley Medal, the Ben Franklin Medal, and the Farney Medal. He also received 27 honorary doctorates from such institutions as Princeton, Georgetown, Drew, Northwestern, Rutgers, Rockefeller, and Notre Dame, to name a few. William Oliver Baker, who started as a small child on a farm and became one of the most influential and respected advisors to presidents, died on October 31, 2005. In his own words of 1968, "With all its beauty and power, the age of science is in no way old enough to tell us what to do or what to think, but only sometimes what to ask." Given his love of sailing, I add the words of Walt Whitman in his memory. "Sail forth, steer for the deep waters only, for we are bound where a mariner has not yet dared to go, and we will risk the ship, ourselves, and all." In looking back at the extraordinary career of William Oliver Baker, how can we interpret his influence and accomplishments? At Bell Labs, he clearly was recognized as the right person at the right time. He was a scientific genius who also realized the bigger picture of scientific discoveries. In Washington, he was able to apply the result of Bell Labs research to the challenges of national security during the time of the Cold War and assist in its conclusion. He kept his personal life private and operated behind the scenes, seeking no credit or publicity. He was educated, gracious, and literate. Such true greatness is rare. We were privileged to know him.